Oh, these things, these are just my smart people books. So today I wanted to highlight some nonfiction books for you guys. This stack is the books that I've read and would recommend, and these are the books that I want to read in the near future. I did just get my brows done, so they're looking a little bit dark and like in your face right now, so just ignore that as best you can, and let's go through these books. So, okay. I am a big fan of nonfiction books, but I have to be in the mood to read them. But nonetheless, these are some nonfictions that I've read like in the past 5-6 years that I've really enjoyed, and I would really like to highlight on my channel. So here we go. Let's push these out of the way right now because we don't need them. Okay, so first up we got The Hunt for Vulcan. So this one actually I saw in a bookstore in San Francisco in 2015, and I don't know why, it just like really jumped out at me, and I told myself that I was gonna get it no matter what. Maybe not during that trip, but just at any point in the future. Like, this name really jumped out at me, and so did the cover and everything. And this was when I was like really starting to get into astronomy and things like that. So I got it as a birthday gift not long thereafter, and I read it, and it is pretty good. I think I'm due for a reread because I don't remember too many details about it, but it has a lot to do with like Einstein and like space discoveries and things like that. So it's just a really, like, not necessarily gripping, but it's a really informative book of something that you wouldn't necessarily know about if you don't read this book. So there you go. It does get a little bit jargony is the only thing, so there was a lot of like looking up definitions and stuff that I didn't know, but otherwise I will probably be rereading this one this soon. Next up we got Hood Feminism. So this one I read earlier this year, and as you can tell I loved it. This is actually the first time that I annotated a book ever. Not ever. I obviously annotated in like undergrad and grad school and things like that, but those were like textbooks and required reading and stuff. So this is different. This is the first book that I annotated like on my own, of my own free will, I guess. I don't know. But this was so good. Like, it really taught me more about how to be a truly, what's it called? Like intersectional feminist, I guess. You have to just be aware of all the different facets of feminism and how many different layers there are to it, and be mindful of like, are you a feminist or are you just a feminist for white people, you know? Or are you a feminist or are you a feminist for like able-bodied people, things like that. So this is a really good reminder of like how to truly incorporate feminism in our lives and our actions, but in the truest sense of the word. Obviously, I have to feature some books about Armenian history, including the Armenian genocide. These are actually mainly about the genocide. So I have Family of Shadows and Black Dog of Fate, and I highly recommend both. Family of Shadows I read more recently. Black Dog of Fate I read back in like 2014, I think. Recommended by my Armenian teacher at UCLA, and they, like, as heartbreaking as it is, I think it's really important for me to continue to read as many accounts of the genocide that there are. Anyway, I was saying that, yeah, as heartbreaking as it is, I think it's important for me to really be well versed in the history of the genocide and the routes that families took to escape the genocide and, you know, bring their families with them and things like that. Most of our ancestors, if you're Armenian and you're living in the diaspora, like they escaped Armenia for a better life, and to this day there's still threats of genocidal actions against us and like war against us and things like that, and we're very poorly geologically positioned and don't have a lot of political allies just because our enemies are so powerful politically. So we are at a disadvantage truly, and just reading the things from the past and how it connects to today and what it led to today in terms of our political climate and cultural climate and things like that, I think it's really eye-opening. Another nonfiction that I read this year is Between the World and Me. This one I read as part of a book club with some friends from grad school, and we had some really amazing discussions based on this book. I cannot recommend it enough. I actually got it as a birthday present for someone not too long ago, and it was just very touching, like seeing this letter that this father wrote to his son and how to, I guess, like manage your expectations when you're growing up as a Black child in America, and what to be wary of and mindful of and things like that. And it's honestly things that I would have never considered if I didn't read this book. Like, it's so wonderful to be able to read these things and sort of begin to understand the plight of other people. We have Just Kids by Patti Smith. I loved this book. I think this is a good book to read, even if you're not into Patti Smith or her music or that era or whatever, just because she's such a wonderful and poetic storyteller. I felt like as she was talking about, you know, the other artists of that time and being in New York and things like that, I was really in New York with her and like talking to the other artists with her. She didn't lead a very glamorous life per se, but the way she describes it just really entices you into that mindset and that lifestyle. I actually got this book in New York. I went to the it was like a rock and roll exhibit type of thing at one of the museums. What's the famous one? The Met? Yes, it was at the Met. And we went through this rock and roll exhibit, and then at the end there was a gift shop, and I wanted to buy this book, so I got it. Yeah, I love Patti Smith. I love her music, and I've always thought, like, I've always seen a resemblance between her and myself, like physically. I don't know. So maybe I'm just biased. I guess I'm just biased. And the last nonfiction that I've read and would recommend is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. So as a psychologist, this was really fascinating for me to read because I always like to read about how other people interact with the patients they have and the problems that they come in with and how they choose to tackle the problems that their patients are facing. And this one was no exception. I think this one was also really touching because it was interspersed with the like author's own life. This one truly had a lot of great stories to tell and a lot of great messages for the readers out there. So I would definitely tell you to pick this one up. The only thing I don't really like is the cover, like the tissue box on the cover. I'm not too big of a fan. I get this symbolism, but not a fan. I had to readjust my camera because sometimes it just stops filming while I'm talking, so I just stopped filming and restarted it. Anyway, okay, you don't care. So maybe I'm going to actually talk about this one in conjunction with this one. So 2 books that I love to read, 2 nonfiction books that I love to read. Clanlands and How the Scots Invented the Modern World. And can you tell I picked these up because I love Outlander? Basically, so this one. Okay, I watched Outlander and I just like immediately fell in love with the scenery and the history and the battles and things like that, and I devoted myself to wanting to learn more about Scotland, so I picked up this one. It also has really good reviews, and as you can see, I actually started it maybe a year ago now, and I got up to page 24 and I was like, I'm too stressed to read a nonfiction right now. This is a lot of details to memorize. I'm gonna save this for another day. So I'm gonna return to this one day, but the goal is to read it, and the goal is to learn all I can about Scotland. So basically I can like answer rapid fire questions about Scotland anytime, anywhere. I think it's a realistic goal, right? I also think it would be cool to get like a coffee table book on like castles of Scotland and Ireland, because then that'll also help me learn more about, I don't know, the history, hopefully. But yes, anyway, this is one that I'd love to get to soon. It's just very dense, and like you can see the text is pretty tiny, so it's a chunky book, like in terms of the amount of information it has. So I really have to be in the right headspace to read this, and I'm not quite there yet, but I will get there. Okay, this one I got because hello Outlander, Jamie. So Clanlands is one that I want to read because it's written by Sam Heughan, who plays Jamie in Outlander. I probably pronounced his last name very wrong. The other author of this book is Graham McTavish, who plays Dougal Mackenzie in Outlander. I think that's his name if I remember correctly. But yeah, I actually heard the audiobook for this is way better than the actual book. Or not better, but it's just a nice like compliment to it, because you get to really hear the humor and the sarcasm, and the banter between the two is hilarious, which I trust, but I just don't have the attention span for audiobooks. I'm not quite there yet, so a physical copy for me is also what a beautiful coffee table book, right? I keep saying coffee table books, and I think I'm gonna do another series, or not series, I'm gonna do another video of me talking about like the coffee table books that I have and that I think would work great on a coffee table once I have my own home. I also want to read this one, Burning Down the House. I actually got this one for free from a friend of mine in grad school. She had a bunch of copies and she gave it to a lot of us. And this one is about the juvenile justice system and how it can be improved upon and what's wrong with it. Obviously, as a school psychologist, I think this one's a really important one for me to read. I actually find that, like, whether conscious or not, I tend to read a lot of books that are relevant to my career and being a more informed school psychologist. So that's why I'm particularly looking forward to this one. I guess this one I should have talked about when I talked about Scotland, because there are, you know, there are ties. But this one is about Mary Tudor, as the title suggests. And this one I picked up from my favorite used bookstore just because I like to learn about history. I think it's really fascinating to be able to know a lot about everything, and so I like slowly try to incorporate more knowledge of other countries and other countries' histories whenever I can. And again, after watching Outlander years ago, like I just went on this like Scottish history and UK history binge, and this purchase was part of that. So I've yet to read it, but I promise I will soon. I'm promising you so that I'm holding myself accountable. This one I love to read soon. Since A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Again, I'm obsessed with all things astronomy. I love learning about astronomy and scientists in that realm and astronomers. Before I keep saying the word astronomy and get sick of that word, I am going to put this one down and introduce you to the last book on my nonfiction TBR. Not the last, there's more, but these are the main ones I'd like to get to soon. This one is called Goddesses and Everywoman, and this one, a family friend, Patrice, sent it to me, and she had nothing but good things to say about this, and I think it's kind of how it relates like women's personalities to the goddesses. It feels like a college level book in terms of like really involved and detailed. It's not like an autobiography, because you know how autobiographies tend to read a little bit more like fluidly and lightly. This one seems a bit more dense, so again I feel like I have to be in the right headspace for this one, but once I'm there, I'm going to read this book so hard. Those are my nonfiction TBR books. These are my, and it just collapsed. These are the nonfiction books that I've read, and I hope that you guys have some takeaways from this. Like you're like, oh, this one looks interesting, adding it to my TBR. This one looks cool, adding that one. Let me know if you do end up adding any of these to your TBR, or if you've read any of these, or if you yourself have any recommendations. And in the meantime, like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I'll be back. I don't know when, but I'll be back. Okay, bye.